Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green have been some of my favorite Pokemon games and are generally seen as upgrades when compared to the original Red and Green games. I figured it was time to revisit these classics, but this time with a bit of a twist. Anytime a new Pokemon game releases, fans always speculate whether or not the starters will keep all four paws firmly on the ground or if they will stand up and become a little more human-like. And given that the starters for Pokemon Wind and Waves were just revealed, I figured now is a perfect time. Today we will be asking the question, can you beat Pokemon Fire Red without standing, or can you beat Pokemon Fire Red with 4 on the floor? Rules are as follows. Number 1, Pokemon must not be standing to be used in battle, i.e. have all 4 legs on the floor. This will lead to some niche situations that will be brought up throughout the run, but we'll surf that Pokemon when we get there. 2, no items in battle. 3, no leveling past the next gym leader's ace. 4, no referencing the fact that I sound sick right now. It's because I am. Starting off right at the beginning, unfortunately, our choice of starters is essentially made for us. Only one of these Pokemon is a quadruped with 4 on the floor, and that'll be our boy Bulbasaur here, usually my last choice. Actually, I'm curious, who's your favorite starter in Gen 1? I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of Charmanders, followed by Squirtles and then Bulbasaurs, but then again, they released Fire Red and Leaf Green, so maybe that implies that Venusaur is a little bit more popular than I thought. But anyway, we named our Bulbasaur something very appropriate, and it was then that our brave hero 4 on floor was accosted by our evil rival, Stander. He stands up. I'm not very creative when it comes to these names, okay? You'll notice that going forward. And we even happened to lose to a crit. Awesome. Very cool game. We then missed a 95% roll to hit a tackle before catching a Rattata, which would be our second team member, and this would be the dynamic duo for quite some time. I will be at least mentioning all of the major battles in the game, but if I don't talk about them for too long or even bring up a battle, probably wasn't worth mentioning, which is kind of the case with Brock. We have Bulbasaur, which pretty much is a free win against Brock. Most of his Pokemon will be 4 times weak to grass, so quite trivial in the beginning. And this is a trend that would actually continue all the way up to Misty. I mean, going through Mount Moon is absolutely no problem. Some of the Zubats can be a bit of a pain, but absolutely nothing insurmountable. Bulbasaur evolves into an Ivysaur. He got them 4 feeties on the floor. We then ran into a Paris, which I actually forgot we would be catching a Paris in this run. I generally don't even give Paris and Parasect the time of day, but it's an extra body that we can use. And looking at Paris, I see 1, 2, and then assumedly 3, 4 little leggies on the other side, as well as these pincer things. I wouldn't probably count these as legs. I guess you could count, say, like a crab's pincers as legs, but it feels a little bit weird since they're really not for walking. So I'm going to go ahead and allow it. Don't worry, this Paris will be a constant letdown the entirety of the time that we have him, so I'm sorry I gotta say that about my boy over here, but it is rough. Technically, we could have just filled out our team with a bunch of Rattata, but I didn't really want to do that as I'm hoping to have a pretty diverse team by the end of the run. Skipping forward to the Scientist with the Dome and Helix fossils. On the one hand, praise Lord Helix. On the other hand, we can actually use the Dome fossil. We can actually use Kabuto. So it pains me to leave Lord Helix behind, but in the hopes of maybe having a decent water type in the future, we're gonna go with the Dome fossil. Just outside of Mount Moon, I decided to check in on Mega Punch and Mega Kick. As it turns out, none of our quadrupeds have fists to Mega Punch, but more surprisingly, none of them can Mega Kick either. Kind of like turn around and Mule Kick them maybe, but this kind of showcases one of the main problems that we're going to have with this run, and that is going to be with move pool diversity. I can't think of a single flying type that we will have, so our flying type coverage is pretty much just non-existent. There will be 1 rock/ground type that we'll be able to use, and they're not very good, so that was a little bit disappointing. But yes, we will be able to use all of the HMs that we could possibly want. On the same hand, we're going to be solely lacking in a lot of coverage. Moving forward to Rival 2, Rival 2 actually put up quite a fight here, and that's simply just because the Charmander is going to be a roadblock here. I mean, we have Rattata, which is essentially required for the Pidgeotto, and by the time the Pidgeotto's gone, then the Rattata is going to be weak. I'm not 100% sure if this miss here actually mattered, but regardless, we would lose this battle, and, you know, that's just kind of the problem that we're running into right now. We're going to be very fire weak until about the time we get to the 5th rival fight. I mean, one of our Mons is 2 times fire weak, and the Paris is 4 times fire weak, so Charmander is not looking particularly pleasant at the moment, but I then decided to go get a couple levels from some of the Pokemon in the grass nearby, moving back to Rival 2 with slightly better luck and most notably preserving Kurt, our Rattata. For the Charmander, we were able to eke out the win. After a little bit of time, I put in some cheat codes to allow us infinite rare candies, which would also give us infinite money. Essentially, this would just cut down on grinding and training up our Pokemon. Using rare candies in this way isn't always optimal, so I won't be using it 100% of the time. You will actually raise very weak Pokemon. You see, Pokemon has an invisible stat called effort values and individual values. Individual values are essentially set as your Pokemon is captured, but effort values, or EVs, you actually get from defeating Pokemon in battle. And if you're using rare candies, that means you're not actually defeating any Pokemon in battle, meaning you're not getting these effort values. And these can add up quite quickly. We will be able to EV train our Pokemon with vitamins once we get to Celadon City, but for right now, it's really not in our best interest to use these rare candies, as it could genuinely make it more difficult even though we're at a higher level. Skipping forward to Misty, as you may anticipate, not a problem at all. Bulbasaur really has made the beginning of this game relatively easy, but, and pardon the water pun, our luck is going to dry up relatively quick. But before that, we were able to pick up the TM for Dig, which is a lot weaker than I remember it being. I thought it was like 80 or 100 base power. Man, they really nuked it in this game. It's 60 base power for a 2-turn move, which is pretty rough. Oh, but what were we doing? We were catching a Meowth. Now, we won't be able to use the Meowth right now, but I threw an EXP share on it, and we would be able to use Persian once it evolved. So for right now, it is a dead spot on our team. Just after catching the Meowth, I was sort of mulling around in my mind where we were going to find a water type, and I got my wires crossed here. I thought we were going to be able to pick up a Slowpoke, which would be wonderful as a water type and as a psychic type, but unfortunately that is a Leaf Green exclusive. We get Psyduck over here, which is not very useful. But for now, we needed to get on to Lieutenant Surge, and we had a level 24 level cap to keep in mind. Haven't mentioned level caps, they haven't been relevant up until now. We were able to just walk through the gyms, but from here on out, we're going to need to keep an eye on our levels, and the levels of the gym leader's ace will be very important from here on out. And then, the beauty of evolution. But oh no, he's starting to slowly become bipedal, and thus he's not allowed unless he's in baby form. Since we talked to Bill, north of Misty's gym, we had access to the SSN, and we were able to pick through some of the trainers here to hopefully get our level a little bit closer to that 24 level cap. And the Growlithe used Roar and brought Meowth out. This is one of the disadvantages to having a Pokemon in our party that we can't use. We essentially just have to restart the fight. It took a couple tries for us to get through this fight without Lurt being brought out, but eventually we managed to do it. I then realized why it felt like I was healing the enemy every time I used my Paris. It's 20 base power. Man, that's rough, dude. I forgot Leech Life used to be a 20 base power move. In later generations, it was buffed to 80 base power and is actually pretty useful. But in this generation, in Gen 1, I don't know exactly when it changed. I think it was relatively recently. Leech Life, they really did bugs dirty the first handful of generations. Some would argue they still are doing bugs very dirty. But I mean, this is just sad. Rival 3 is incredibly stressful as always. Leading off with a Pidgeotto, really the only thing we can use on this would be our Rattata. Luckily, you can see Hyperfang is still putting in absolute work. I know that Rattata is absolutely going to be the MVP versus the Charmeleon a little bit later on, as well as the Kadabra. Man, Bulbasaur, really good in the first two gyms, but pretty rough versus the rival fight. We then got a very lucky critical hit on the Raticate before it switched out into Charmeleon, and another critical hit on the Charmeleon with a Hyperfang. That critical hit absolutely mattered here. And then it was just a matter of cleaning up the Raticate as well as the Kadabra in the back. Kadabra, very neat Pokemon. Defenses of a wet paper bag, however, goes down to a single Hyperfang. We picked up Cut and immediately taught it to our Paris. And I forgot how goofy this animation was. Look at him, he's learning. You can tell I was an impressionable kid because I used to put CDs on my forehead. Not because I thought it would allow me to learn what was on them, but just because it was fun to stick them to my forehead. You know, like the spoon trick where you put it on your nose and balance it there. I was a weird kid. Also, a lot of my CDs stopped working after a while. I can't imagine why. Skipping forward to Lieutenant Surge, I honestly had more troubles with some of the trainers inside his gym. They kept trying to set up evasion, via double team. If they had just unga bunga'd into my team, they probably would have won. I would probably have a really hard time with, I think Raichu has either Stomp or Body Slam. Either way, if they had just used that, they probably could have won, but questionable decisions of the trainers in this game are going to be a common exploitation point for us. But hey, third badge obtained, and we were ready to make our way to Erica, increasing the level cap to level 29. And Erica could honestly be a pretty rough matchup for us here. We don't have anything that hits them super effectively, and they resist most of our most powerful attackers, except for Rattata. So we're going to need to figure that out. Luckily, we'll be able to use Persian for the upcoming fight as it evolves at level 28, something we're definitely going to want to have happen before we get to Erica. Making our way through Rock Tunnel on our way to Lavender Town, we managed to catch a double evolution of our Paris and Meowth in the same fight, who actually should be relatively strong at this point, although their attacks do leave a bit to be desired. Just to the west of Lavender Town, we're able to get our first Pokemon FireRed exclusive in Growlithe. If you're playing Leaf Green, you have access to Vulpix here, but we get Growlithe. I just realized that trainer right there had both of the exclusives that you can find on this route from FireRed and Leaf Green. Just a surprising little bit of good game design. I never really put that together before right now, and one of the reasons why I chose this version of the game, I absolutely love Growlithe. He was a little wily, but eventually we did manage to get a hold of him, and this would make Erica much more manageable. Although yet again, the moveset really leaves something to be desired. Keep in mind I was pretty sick while doing this challenge, so I was definitely fighting my NyQuil demons. Oh, we get Eevee! Oh my god, dude. Fuck yeah. We then went shopping, picked up some TMs and some vitamins, as well as a Thunderstone to evolve our Eevee into a Jolteon. Yay. I'm pretty sure this is the only electric type Pokemon we have access to, so it was either between this or Vaporeon. Normally I would probably go with Vaporeon, but Jolteon is going to be a solid option and a wonderful addition to the team. Our Eevee is officially all grown up right now. They grow up so fast. It's literally been in-game like 10 minutes, and I couldn't be more proud. Making our way to the Rocket Game Corner, I then definitely didn't cheat at gambling before realizing I had infinite money and just bought a bunch of rocket coins anyway. I guess I should clarify, I don't actually have infinite money. I just gave myself a stack of 999 rare candies, and whatever happens with them happens. Interestingly enough, I think I ended up spending most of those rare candies here at the game corner just by selling them to buy rocket coins. So buying these TMs was definitely very pricey, but very much so worth it, as we'll be getting things like Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam. This is probably the cheesiest thing that I did through the entire challenge, but I've spent hours at the Rocket Game Corner collecting coins to get these TMs in the past. It is something that I will do if needed. So again, in the interest of getting the video out this year, I decided I would go ahead and just buy the coins. So how will Erica stand up to our newly captured Growlithe with its very legally obtained Flamethrower TM? Okay, Stun Spore, not great, but our Flamethrower should do huge damage even though our levels are a little low. Okay, Paralysis, awesome. Looks like Acid's gonna be a 3-shot. Paralysis. Again. Right, so the Growlithe wouldn't actually end up being a factor in the Erica fight, but how does the rest of our team handle this situation? As it turns out, Kurt is going to be an absolutely pivotal piece to this Erica fight. Yet again, our boy Rattata has really been carrying us through this game so far. Hyper Fang this early into a run is kind of crazy. Not to mention it gets stab or same type attack bonus, pretty much a 50% damage boost to any move that shares a type with the user, meaning this Hyper Fang is actually hitting pretty hard even off of Rattata's pretty middling stats. But after taking out Tangela, Kurt would unfortunately fall to poison, and we're down to the B team here. I decided to send out our Parasect to see if I could get maybe a Sleep or a Poison off on them. I was under the impression that Powder moves wouldn't work on a Grass type. That's apparently not in this generation, that is a later generation thing. And our boy Parasect here was just about to pull off the win when a Hyper Potion. Right. I forgot the trainers in these gens really relied on items to make these battles slightly more difficult. It reminds me of that meme. What? It really does feel that way. And after 3 Sleep Powder misses, Lurt manages to bring us the victory, and we're able to defeat Erica, gaining our 4th badge. I thought for some reason we needed to wait for this guy to move off of this poster. As it turns out, we can just scare him off of it. Moving through the rocket hideout, this is sort of a low point in the run. All of these trainers are very low level, and even Giovanni provides very little resistance. And of note, we actually have a very large level margin to make up. Koga's Wheezing is level 43, so our level cap is actually quite high right now. Now the only disadvantage to that is that Sabrina's level cap is also level 43, so we need to do both of these gyms before hitting level 43, but with how slow you level up in these older games, that's not going to be a problem at all. And in fact, from here on out, we're essentially going to be significantly under-leveled. You might have seen we have a Firestone, but we're not evolving our Growlithe just yet. We are waiting for it to get Flame Wheel. The PP on Flamethrower is only 15, so it'll be nice to have a secondary fire move to sort of soften the blow with some of the weaker enemies. It doesn't make sense to be using a decently high power move on some of these wild Pokemon that really don't need it. And Arcanine actually only gets 1 move in its learn set, and that's Extreme Speed, but I don't think it's till like level 50 or so. My goal is to get to, I think, level 31 or 32, get Flame Wheel, then we can evolve into Arcanine, and finally we will have the bestest boy. Now that we have the Silph Scope from defeating Giovanni, we were able to head to the tower in Lavender Town and fight Rival 4. Now normally there's a bit of a power spike here. His Pokemon aren't particularly high leveled, but he does gain access to this Gyarados here. However, we have a Jolteon, which absolutely just blanks him. Not to mention, level differential is a bit significant in our advantage for once. And I would like to play up this fight, but honestly, Jolteon with Thunderbolt and Growlithe with Flamethrower make absolutely menial labor, light work of everyone on the Rivals team. We did a bit of training on the channelers in the area, and I technically invalidated the run here as well. Never used the yellow flute before. That's really nice. Wait, fuck, I'm not allowed to use items in battle. Oh, I forgot. Okay, I just need to remember to not do that on an important fight, I guess. Guys, the run is invalid. Okay. You see, while at the Rocket Game Corner, I found a yellow flute item, which is supposed to heal confusion when used in battle. So I figured I've never used this item, may as well try it out. And sure enough, works exactly as you'd anticipate. Oops, I decided to let it slide. I didn't even honestly need to bring it up. I just thought it was kind of funny. After the battle, I immediately discarded it because, well, I won't be needing it anyway. But anyway, I was a little bit worried about having to use the Silph Scope, as I'm not allowed to use items in battle. I would have allowed it anyway, just because, I mean, it's kind of a vital progression point. But as it turns out, in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, apparently it just uses the item automatically. So, chaos averted, I guess. We then immediately went to go get Fly and remove the Snorlax in front of Cycling Road, wake up the Snorlax, and we fought through a handful of the trainers on Cycling Road, just for a bit of experience. As I mentioned before, we are now going to begin being chronically underleveled for the rest of the game, but I did still want some of those effort values. We hit level 31 and gained Flame Wheel, which means that it was also time to evolve Growlithe into an Arcanine. Bah! Kurt then absolutely got blasted by a Fearow, and it was at this point that I started to realize our boy Kurt here was really starting to show his age. I mean, even Raticate at this point would have a hard time keeping up. The fact that a Rattata has performed this well so far into the game, we're 4 badges in, is really quite impressive. But it would be time to replace Kurt very shortly, which we would do in the Safari Zone. Speaking of the Safari Zone, we were able to catch a Rhyhorn, a Nidorino. We then captured a Tauros, which would be one of the best normal types in the entire game, and will likely be on our Elite Four team, assuming we make it that far. Picked up Surf and the Golden Teeth, and it was time to continue on about our way. We then backtracked a little bit and got a Krabby. Now, I was very excited to evolve this Krabby into a Kingler, as we would finally have a water type. And then I remembered that Kingler is actually really bad in this generation.
I like money.
Kingler has a special attack stat of 50, which is not very good at all. And given that the physical special split hasn't happened yet, there are no physical water type moves to use that 130 base power off of, which would actually be quite good. I still caught a Krabby just in case we needed it, but probably won't actually be using it, which means that we are still sans one water type. I then decided to go through Silphco, which would allow us to gain a couple more levels for Sabrina and Koga. Nothing here is particularly difficult. All of these rockets are very low leveled, but there is somewhat of an infamous difficulty spike here in the 5th rival fight. And I know we'd be a bit under leveled. We were actually more under leveled than I thought we would be. But how did this end up going? Well, surprisingly well. We were able to use our Rhyhorn cell to take out the Pidgeot, which normally we would have needed to use Jolteon for, switch into Arcanine for the Execute. Flamethrower was a one-shot. Alakazam really likes to use Future Sight. I actually thought Future Sight was like a 120 base power move. I guess it's not in this generation. It's apparently weaker than even just Psychic. Not really sure what they were thinking as far as a balancing factor there, considering it attacks like 3 turns after. But Arcanine was able to take down the Alakazam with little issue. As Gyarados comes in, I actually decided to send out Nidorino. Didn't want our Jolteon taking a bunch of damage on the switch-in. 07's in chat for Nidorino for taking that Future Sight, allowing for a free switch-in to our Jolteon, which was able to absolutely wipe the floor with both the Gyarados and the Charizard, which for some reason went for Scary Face, even though he was in quick attack range, and Rival 5 was taken down with honestly little issue. After that, we were able to pick up Lapras, and this is probably one of the more questionable decisions that I made in the run, simply because, yes, Lapras does have 4 flippers. Would you consider Lapras to be a quadruped? I mean, it has 4 limbs, and would feasibly use them for movement when not swimming, so we're gonna go ahead and use our girl Lapras here. And with that, we'll have a pretty solid team. Finally, we have a water type that is actually useful. Sorry, Krabby. And as much as I want to try to hype up the Giovanni 2 fight, there's no point. We absolutely wipe the floor with them. We have such a good matchup in every single way. Honestly, the worst Pokemon for us would be the Nidorino, and maybe the Kangaskhan could have done something, but it kept going for Rage. It would then break the Rage chain that it was using with a Tail Whip. And I mean, yeah, that Rage did quite a bit of damage there, but it did not knock down the Nidorino. It was, however, at this point that I realized that we needed to do something with this Rhyhorn. He's just so disappointing. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because he's just an unevolved Pokemon, but still, man, this is exhausting. Whether that be give him some TMs or ditch him for another Pokemon, I don't know exactly what it is yet, but something needs to happen. To Giovanni's credit, the Nidoqueen did give us quite a bit of struggle. Simply just its typing is really good, and a lot of our more powerful Pokemon can't do too much against it as it is part poison typing. Yeah, we might have a bit of a problem here. Go for the flinch. Go for the flinch again. Okay. 3, 4. You know what? Honestly, that's fine. I was not anticipating that to work out that long anyway. Our boy Lurt here hit the 3 in a row flinch chance of bite, which may very well have won us this round, so damn good work, Lurt. You know, the normal types have really been holding their own in this challenge and have honestly been pulling their weight plus some. And when I've been trying to fit a Rhyhorn and a Parasect on my team, they need to pull a little bit of extra weight. A game with Mario wearing a bucket on his head. What game is that? Shortly after that, our Quadosaur evolved into a Venusaur while preparing for the Sabrina fight. And honestly, if there's any one fight that I'm worried about, genuinely, aside from the Elite Four, it is Sabrina. I mean, Alakazam is absolutely no slouch, and even, you know, the Drowsy and the Hypno are a bit more bulky than you might think. Not to mention, just in Gen 1, Psychic types are really, really good, and at least in this challenge, we don't have access to any Dark types, and most Bug types are really bad. I mean, just to put into perspective, Alakazam has an attack stat of 135 and a speed of 120. This Pokemon is the epitome of a glass cannon and could very well sweep our entire team just spamming Psychics. Now, with that in mind, will the AI actually do that? Let's find out. Well, it would actually go quite well, up until the Alakazam. We were pretty much able to Thunderbolt through everything until Alakazam hit our Jolteon back with a powerful Psychic. I was anticipating this, sending out Arcanine next, hoping that he could tank the Psychic, and he does. You notice we are still quite underleveled for this fight, but Arcanine just so bulky that we're able to finish off the Alakazam. A crit rate here probably would have cost me this entire fight. I don't think there's anything else in my party that would have been able to stand even one attack from this Alakazam, so a bit of a lucky break there. Now, Koga can be a little bit annoying. He likes to use a bunch of evasion and accuracy-based moves, as well as he can poison your Pokemon and be pretty annoying. With that in mind, he really wasn't an issue. Now that we have a water type, we're very well equipped for pretty much anything. Again, even with this pretty severe level deficit, we're able to just spam Surf, Flamethrower, and Thunderbolt until we win. I did get a little bit lucky. A lot of the cheese that Koga tries to employ just kind of didn't work for him. I definitely could have gotten RNG'd into oblivion here, but it didn't happen. Once we defeated Sabrina, I kind of figured Koga was going to be a walk in the park. But I do kind of think, what if we weren't able to catch a Growlithe and evolve into an Arcanine, or what if we weren't able to get a Jolteon here? We would actually be in quite a bit of trouble here, just because poison types are extremely bulky, and, once you let them get their evasion up and lower your accuracy and whatnot, it could be a bit of a problem. But it ended up going well, and it was time to go to Cinnabar Island for Blaine and the Volcano Badge. This would also raise our level cap to level 47. I'm just going to spoil it for you here. We're not going to get anywhere near that level cap. We'll just go ahead and skip over the Cinnabar Mansion. Nothing interesting happened there. And on to Blaine. Now, interestingly enough about Lapras, it's half water, half ice type, so it's not exactly a surefire win here, as especially the last Arcanine's Fire Blast will be neutral against it instead of resisted. That ice typing really holds Lapras back in my opinion. But how did Blaine go? Well, as you may anticipate, Lapras carries us through a bulk of the fight, but once we get to the Arcanine, he's again a very bulky boy, and we would have to actually take him down with our Venusaur, and it would not be a clean win by any means. We got very lucky with sleep turns, but we were still able to pull it out in the end, and then I accidentally accepted the invitation to one island. No, I didn't want to go! Off. Hit the wrong button. Let me go. I want to go away. I want to leave. I want to not be here. I want to be a Pokemon master. I don't want to do all this extra. I don't want to go to your island. In this challenge, I don't care about any of this. This does not further our plans. So I ended up just redoing the fight with Blaine. But this time I stuffed my Pokemon full of rare candies up to level 43. As you may anticipate, this made the fight very, very easy for the second time. I'm not even going to waste your guys' time with the 8th gym badge. It's Giovanni again. Lapras absolutely just destroys this team. As a reward for defeating Giovanni and getting the Earth badge, we actually get access to Earthquake. And I had seriously considered putting this on my Rhyhorn, and then I realized there is a far better user of this move, even when you take into consideration stab or same type attack bonus. We're going to be teaching this to Tauros, and at this point I was starting to realize that our team was actually pretty good. Rival 6 gave us a little bit of trouble just because, again, that Alakazam can put in some crazy work. And Charizard is still a pretty powerful Pokemon, even if Gyarados did set up a Rain Dance the previous turn, which was a very questionable choice. But we did lose a few Pokemon on this fight, and I should mention, it's not that we've, been absolutely walking through this game per se. Most of these gym leaders have taken down at least one or two of our Pokemon, but interestingly enough, we haven't actually lost a battle in quite some time. But if you've ever played this game, you know that there is a significant difficulty spike in the Elite Four. It's 5 trainers, you have to do them all in a row. So what exactly does that look like? I decided to boost my Pokemon up to level 50 and give it a try just to see how an Elite Four run might look. And Lorelei goes about as you would anticipate. We lead with Jolteon, one-shot the first 2 Pokemon, but then run into the Slowbro. Now, actually, never mind. No, we one-shot the Slowbro as well. Okay, I was not anticipating that. It was at this point I made a huge mistake. You'll notice that I hovered Thunderbolt for a little while. I don't have that many PP restoring moves. I wanted to see if I could conserve as much Thunderbolt PP as I possibly could. So I went with a double kick here, and it did not do nearly enough damage. Jolteon gets confused. Full restore. I hurt myself in confusion. Twice, mind you. Get body slammed, paralyzed, ice beamed, and now this fight could very well run away from us. We send in our Tauros and go for an Earthquake. Lapras is just so bulky. Our Tauros gets taken down. I'm sort of thinking of what exactly I want to do here. I'm pretty sure there's another full restore in the back. So I decided to go for another double kick, but we get yet another confusion and we attack ourselves. Hit with the body slam and things are actually starting to look really bad right now. Go for the extreme speed, does not do nearly enough damage. Oh, the confusion again. Hit him with the flamethrower. The flamethrower does get the knockout. Luckily, Jinx is the last Pokemon. We're confused, we hit ourselves in confusion, and now we're asleep. Oh, we do not knock out the Jinx. Lorelei uses yet another full restore. I'm not happy about this. Lapras manages to take out the Jinx, but lesson learned, just use the one extra Thunderbolt. Yeah, it might cost me 4 revives, 4 potions, and a bunch of Pokemon power on other moves, but at least we saved that one Thunderbolt. And moving on to Bruno, I mean, he's always been a joke. Yes, we lose a couple of Pokemon here, and he's pretty annoying with the full restores, but overall, Bruno's a complete non-factor. And this really comes down to Hitmonchan is a great user of the elemental punches, or well, he would be in future generations. They're all special moves right now, but it would at least probably be doing more damage than whatever he's doing here. In the live commentary, I actually stressed out a little bit about him having Fire Punch, and maybe that's a problem. You know, could have gotten a burn or an Ice Punch, could have gotten a freeze or something, but Bruno has not earned his place in the Elite Four in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinions. Now, moving on to Agatha, I didn't really have anything specifically that I thought was going to be particularly useful against Agatha. My thought was maybe I'd be able to use Tauros and spam Earthquake, and then I remembered that there's a good possibility that at least Gengar may have Levitate, and if that's the case, probably better just to lead with Jolteon and hope that we can rely on the frailty of the Gengar line to sort of carry us through. But overall, of the fights, this is the one that I'm the most worried about. There's only a 4-level differential here against the first couple Mons. Thunderbolt one-shots, Thunderbolt one-shots. Arbok is a bit of a problem. I'm very confident that we're not going to one-shot. We switch into Arcanine for the Arbok. I then realized he's going to keep spamming Sludge Bomb, so I switch in our Nidorino and try to go for an Ice Beam. I'm hoping maybe I can get a freeze. Full restore, of course, and this might seem like a bad thing. However, having them use full restore on Arbok means they won't have it for later, one of their more powerful Pokemon. Earthquake coming through on Filet Mignon. I really wanted to know if this Gengar had Levitate, but we got put to sleep, and the Sludge Bomb, unfortunately, will be a 2-shot. We don't wake up, and Tauros is knocked out. We then essentially learn that it's very possible that the critical hit may have mattered on the earlier Gengar, and as much as you wouldn't think, this Haunter actually ends up being the biggest issue on Agatha's team. They just kept getting really good sleep turns, but we set up the Leech Seed. My hope is that regardless of whether or not we're asleep, we're still going to be racking up damage. The Dream Eater is going to do an insane amount of damage to our Venusaur, but the Leech Seed continuously just racking up damage. Yet another Hypnosis hit. And then for whatever reason goes for Mean Look. I'm not entirely sure what they're planning. And Dream Eater not doing nearly as much to our Lapras. At this point, it's kind of just a matter of time until something happens. We get put to sleep by Hypnosis, and I'm forced to stay in here. They go for the Dream Eater, which means that the Leech Seed will not knock out this turn. Another Dream Eater. The Leech Seed still won't knock out this turn, but as soon as we wake up, we are good for the knockout. We almost knocked out by the Dream Eater. One more Ice Beam, and Agatha is defeated. That was overall pretty close, but that was maybe some of the worst luck I've ever had on Agatha. Having Hypnosis hit that many times and staying asleep for that long is really quite uncommon, but now it is on to Lance. Now, I didn't know Lance was going to lead Gyarados here. I usually just lead our Jolteon because I would rather be switching it out into something more bulky than having Jolteon take a pretty nasty hit on the way in. But Jolteon would end up being the perfect lead here. We then go for a Paralysis on the second Dragonair that switches in. And you can see, I'm thinking here, what would be the best option? I have a Paralysis to cover the switch in. I said to go for the Ice Beam. It does not one-shot, which is maybe a little bit concerning. I then read the full restore, go for the Body Slam so that it doesn't put him back into full restore range, and we're able to knock out the first Dragonair. Ancient Power from the Aerodactyl does a lot of damage, but I decide it's maybe time to swap out. I'm not entirely sure who to go into just yet. I really want to keep Lapras for Dragonite, and I decide to go into Tauros, which hits it with both Intimidate and tanks the Hyper Beam very well. So we have a couple of options. I said to go for a Double Edge, does not knock out. Another Hyper Beam, we're going to take that just fine. Strength for the knockout on the Aerodactyl. and into Dragonite. I said to go for a Scary Face here. I want to lower its speed. The Outrage is going to do absolutely massive damage, no chance of us surviving that, but we are able to outspeed because of the Scary Face, and even though it's 4 times effective, we still don't knock out with the Ice Beam. That level differential absolutely coming in clutch for Lance. So okay, reestablish speed control on the Dragonite with a Thunder Wave. I send in our Nidorino with an Ice Beam. You can see it's doing pretty good damage even though it's, so weak. It's still 4 times effective and absolutely demolished by the Hyper Beam. But that's fine, that means he's going to need to recharge next turn. We send out Jolteon yet again, go for the Thunderbolt, and now we have a single Dragonair here. Go for the Thunder Wave for speed control. Jolteon's knocked out. I then forget about Shed Skin. 30% chance at the end of each turn to shed a status problem. Pretty unlucky there, but you cannot shed Leech Seed with that. And I decide to just sort of chip him away. I'm not entirely sure if I want to go for like a Growl, maybe make those Outrages a little, bounce off us a little bit more. And you can kind of see how this is going to go. I mean, it's going to be kind of close just because this Outrage is doing some pretty good damage to us. And interestingly enough, we're actually able to get use of Growl on the Elite Four, which I don't think I've ever had Growl up to this point before, but it came in handy here. We may well have gotten knocked out if we didn't have that. And that means we are 1 fight away from completing this challenge, our rival, which we have defeated countless times before. Well, 6 times before, and I wasn't all that concerned about this fight, but as it turns out, I kinda needed to be. So what do I mean by that? Well, starts off with his Pidgeot, that's fine. We go and hit it with a Thunderbolt. Even with the level differential, we still manage to get that knockout. Rhydon, we can go into our Venusaur. He does really good damage, but the 4 times effective Razor Leaf is more than enough to take him down. And now we have Alakazam. And, you can see me pausing here. I'm not really sure what to do. He goes for the Future Sight. I was fully expecting him to just spam Psychic here. He actually does the dumbest thing possible and goes for a second Future Sight. So I put him to sleep. We have Leech Seed and Sleep set up. I'm not entirely sure where I want this Future Sight to go. And I decide to just let Venusaur get knocked. Oh, that doesn't actually knock him out. Right. I keep forgetting that Future Sight is pretty much a non-factor in this generation. But then Charizard gets sent out. I know Venusaur is pretty much toast at this point, so I just select Sleep Powder, which maybe he misses a Fire Blast or something, and we can get something useful here. But I'm looking at the level differential at this point, and we still managed to outspeed with Jolteon, but we do not one-shot. And the Fire Blast absolutely cooking Jolteon here. And it was at this point I was starting to get a little bit spooked. I decided to send in Nidorino, who, again, cooked by Fire Blast. Not surprising. Inside, okay, time to hit the gas pedal. We get a Fire Blast miss, which may well have been very impactful on this fight. Arcanine for the execute. He goes for a Light Screen, which is pretty annoying. The Flamethrower still does pretty good damage with the burn actually huge. That means that we will 2-shot, and now we have Gyarados. And this is actually quite a big problem. I know the rival still has a bunch of full restores that he can throw onto this Gyarados. I go for the extreme speed, knowing full well we're going to get outsped here. Absolutely blast us with a Hydro Pump. If I had any electric type coverage here, we would be fine. And what do I do here? Oh, honestly, I think I just hit Double Edge. It's between Double Edge and Scary Face. Okay, I'm going for the damage, going for Double Edge. Dragon Rage, which is pretty weird. Hit Double Edge again, doesn't quite knock him out, and you and I both know where this is going. He's going to use a full restore. Yep, okay. Not only is he okay with Pokemon standing on their hind legs, he's also okay using full restores in a championship bout. Absolutely cringe. Going for the Ice Beam here, it's neutral damage. I'm hoping for the Freeze. The Thrash is just simply doing way too much damage. He's confused, still hits us with the Dragon Rage. I'm not sure if that's better or worse than Thrash, but we get the Freeze. He's frozen solid. We go for the Body Slam. I have to get the KO here. I don't quite get it, and he gets another full restore. But we do get the paralysis on the Body Slam. So this isn't over. I think Ice Beam is still my best option for damage, just definitely confirming that that's the case. Overall, our rival's wallet wins, and so where does that leave us here? Okay, so we lost that, but it was very close, and yes, I could rare candy up or even just train my Pokemon to be a little bit higher level, but that was so close. I think I want to give it just another try. And so we ran it again. Rhydon, switch in Venusaur, go for a Razor Leaf. I You can see I kind of double guessed myself there, but I was like, obviously I just want to go for the Razor Leaf. Alakazam luckily does cooperate, pretty much spamming Future Sight. I'm not sure why he doesn't go for a Psychic here. Another Razor Leaf will take down the Alakazam while it is asleep, but Charizard was the main menace from last time, hitting us with an Aerial Ace. Lapras unfortunately takes the Future Sight on the way in, hits with a Fire Blast, and it doesn't quite knock out. I go for the Hydro Pump, which also doesn't knock out. 13 level difference really taking effect right here. Jolteon hums in, finishes off Charizard. We have Arcanine for Executor. He hits with a Sleep Powder, which is pretty unfortunate. And the Egg Bomb, I mean, that hurts quite a bit. Luckily, we get an Egg Bomb miss. We stay asleep for the full 3 turns. We wake up, 1 Flamethrower. Don't think this KOs. Nope, it doesn't quite KO. Egg Bomb takes us out, and I have a decision to make. I can send in Jolteon and for sure outspeed, but I have a feeling he's going to use his full restores here, and I really don't want to send Jolteon in against a full health Executor. So I send in Taurus. Sure enough, full restore, double edge again. The Sleep Powder misses. Another full restore. Double edge again. We actually get knocked out by Giga Drain there. And I know that I need to save Jolteon for the Gyarados. If not, he's just going to sweep us again. Ice Beam, interestingly enough, coming in clutch on the Nidorino again. Hydro Pump doesn't actually quite knock us out. I really thought it would. I go for the Ice Beam, hoping to get the freeze. Nidorino gets knocked out. But then we have to send in Jolteon, we simply click Thunderbolt, and thus we have defeated our rival, the one who believes that Pokemon should eternally be standing upright, and proven that you can indeed beat Pokemon FireRed without standing up. So overall, if you're looking for a silly little challenge that you can try at home yourself, this is probably one of them. But anyway, with that in mind, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. It does help me out an awful lot. Let me know if you have any other ideas for challenges you want me to try to tackle, and there's a 95% chance that I will look at it. Thank you so much to all of my supporters on all of the platforms. I'm Newbornkilik, and I will see you in the next one. I'm out.